known as Sarah the Pivoter. Today, I have a friend here, David Allen, who was introduced to us by a dear friend of ours both, Sandra Nelson. And he is a people leader. I love this description because at the end of the day, how we show up and what we take a stand for is how we impact the world around us. David is an entrepreneur, an innovator, and a pilot, and we both share a passion for aviation, as well as doing things right the first time. David, thank you for being here with me in the lounge today.
Thank you for having me, Sarah.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. I'm so glad that Sandra introduced us. She clearly knows
Love
us both
Sarah.
very well.
We love Sandra. She's
We
like
love
one of my
Sandra.
favorite people in the world. Like when you first said that, I just was like got a little grin on my face. And like,
We'll
I wish she
definitely have
was
to send.
here, like and
I
sitting next
know.
to us or sitting next to you. Like she's just so awesome.
Well, you know what? We're gonna facilitate that as an in-person meeting, and maybe we can do a conversation with the three of us on another episode.
That'd be awesome. I'd be in.
Yes, absolutely. Because she also shares the passion that we have for developing people and making sure that people are in the right lane and have the right environment in order to thrive. I'm curious. You've been in the industry a long time, not just as a pilot, but as a business owner. What have you seen as one of the biggest sticky points on why people fail?
Whew. Well, we have four rules at our company, and they're termed the referability habits, and they came from an organization called Strategic Coach. And it really just kind of comes down to what mom and dad taught you. And, you know, things happen, accidents happen. It's every entrepreneur's worst nightmare. But typically, there are learning opportunities. And so when the big things happen, I don't tend to get passionate, which is the code word for my temper. Um, because you're like, is everybody okay? An airplane can be fixed, and we can learn from this, and etc. But the four things that mom and dad taught us are show up on time,
Mm.
do what you say, finish what you start, and say please and thank you. And I think the first thing, if we go step by step, showing up on time. It's all about respect for other people, and discipline. You
Mhm.
know, uh, uh, do what you say, keeping your word. You talk about failure. Uh, if you can't show up on time, be early. That's what
Yes.
my dad always said. If you can't be on time, just be early. Do what you say. It's about your personal integrity. Finishing what you start. How many times do we get excuses why you couldn't finish?
Hmm.
And it's just annoying. It doesn't take much. Sometimes I always call it 5% more or just 5 more minutes. Just 5% more or 5 more minutes. And then, just say please and thank you. It's just really obvious. It just shows courtesy. It shows respect for others.
I love that. Very simple rules, and yet not always remembered or easy, especially in today's world. I say please and thank you to my ChatGPT.
Those are what? I'm sorry?
I said I say please and thank you to my
Oh, do
ChatGPT.
you really?
Yeah. You know what?
I didn't
Hey,
hear that. Yeah,
if
it's
one
such,
day the AI overlords, are the
yeah.
rulers, I wanna have a good relationship with them. Also, it's just my habit. And so I noticed this the other day. And then I think I just read today actually that OpenAI said that that costs a lot of money because of the extra computing power for everyone doing that, which made me giggle a little bit. But it is a
Interesting.
very important point. It doesn't take much. Uh,
Doesn't.
it's a sign of respect that, especially when you're asking for something, other people are not beholden to you, right? And to show that consideration and understanding that this is effort for other people as well, and that this is a two-way street, a conversation, and an exchange, giving and receiving, not just taking and then going on.
100%. I write thank you cards, and
Yeah.
a long time ago, I used to handwrite all of them. And as I've gotten older, my handwriting has just gotten worse and worse. And I even like try to concentrate while I'm
Uh-huh.
handwriting, and it's horrendous. And so
Hmm.
now I'm typing them on personal stationery on executive size paper, and I sign that and send it. But I've gone to offices where I've not met the person in person, but I have a relationship with them over the years.
Yes.
insurance agent, and just our I don't like the word vendors, but our partners in aviation, our suppliers. And then finally, I'm in their city, and I walk into their office, and there's my thank you card from 3 or 4 years ago, pinned, on their desk or somewhere on their desk or in a magnetic thing, because people just don't take that extra effort just to, just 30 seconds to sign and send it out. So I
Absolutely.
believe is the healthiest of all human emotions, and so every Friday I make a list of thank yous so that I can send out. And sometimes it's just a one sentence thing, hey Sarah, thank you for having me on the podcast. Sign, send, done.
Yeah.
It's just a little thing. 'Cause, I mean, the mail that we get these days is junk mail
I
or a
know.
bill, right?
I still remember being a child and saying to my mom, I couldn't wait to get mail. And she, reminded me again, when you're an adult, all you get is bills and spam. And I was like, I don't care. And then I get to do what I want. And like, and little did I know I should have stayed back
Mhm.
there. It is all bills and spam. And now it's, we don't get those letters. I have kept every single letter that has been handwritten to me
Yeah,
because it's
same.
meaningful.
Very
And
meaningful.
I've gotten pictures of from the ones I sent, also with like my doctor scribble handwriting. I
Right.
try to concentrate too, and I look at what my handwriting used to look like in high school, and I'm like, what happened?
I
my
know.
my best friend told me once when I sent him a birthday card, he said, you know what, I have either really good news for you or really bad news. Either you've gotten your PhD and I should congratulate you, or you've had a stroke and I should be really worried. I was like, yes, I know. I can't read it either. I'm sorry.
Horrible.
I love you.
Yeah, I write, you know, when I fly IFR and I have to write a clearance, I, I'm like, I got to call back. I'm like, I can't read my writing. What's the squawk code? Like, what's the frequency I'm supposed to go to? Was it 2,000 or 3,000? So yeah, it's horrendous.
Yes. And you know what? It's also a reminder that we need to slow down. We live in this world where computing power is the fastest it's ever been.
Yeah.
The rate of change is
Microwave culture.
astronomical,
Yeah.
right? And our brains are struggling to keep up. And that processing that we're, the amount that we had to do 20 years ago compared to today. I mean, the average anxiety that a person feels today would have you in a mental hospital back in the 50s.
Correct. Yeah. You're right on. You're spot on. You're spot on.
And that's probably contributing to, the biggest points of failure is that we're moving too fast. We're not remembering these basic four
Yeah.
principles.
And people are on this all the time and their head down,
Yes.
It's like, uh, it's the first thing people pick up at in the morning. It's the last thing they put down at night. So, hi doggy.
Right. This is why I often go on trips or holidays where I will not have a device. Intentionally, there's no signal there, or the device is taken from me upon entry. And I cannot contact you if I wanted to. I
Yeah.
let people know where I'm at so that in case of
Same.
emergency, we can be
Same.
in contact. And you know what? I
Feel
found,
liberating and freeing,
yeah,
right?
and the world doesn't stop and it also doesn't end because guess what? I'm not that important,
Yeah. We're all forgettable. We
right?
really are. And
Yeah.
what's amazing is like text beget text, emails beget emails. And so then, like, after the third day, my mother lives in Costa Rica, and I'll go there. And so sometimes there's cell phone service, sometimes there isn't, but there's internet service pretty much everywhere. So then at the end of the day or beginning of the day, I'll go grab some internet. But by the third or fourth day, I've seen my messages on my computer start to dwindle. I see my emails start to dwindle.
Hmm.
Important ones, right? We still get all those spam emails, but like, it's like, you know what? It makes you think maybe I can just do emails like it from 8 to 10, 1 to 2, and maybe do a glance at 4:30 and just kind of be done with it, Because like, if somebody really needs you, they can call you.
Right.
That's
Isn't it amazing that people forget that?
yeah,
I do have to admit, if I my phone, I have no signal in my apartment. So if you try to call me, probably it's going to go straight to voicemail. But there's, again, other ways of reaching. There's the internet calling now. And again, if you just are compelled to reply to emails as soon as they come in, you're also training other people that you're always available.
Right. 100%. 100%.
Yeah. This is also very crucial, I believe, for leaders because you may say, we value work life integration and having a healthy lifestyle. We don't expect you to be on all the time. And yet you're sending emails at 9 p.m. or 1 a.m. and you might be in a different time zone. That doesn't matter, right? The underlying message that they will receive, particularly if there's a high power distance between positions or culture, is that, oh, I should respond to this because they're online.
Well,
And
I
so,
see your puppy in the background. I'm sorry, I didn't
oh
mean to
yeah,
interrupt you. Were you finished?
that's okay.
Yeah.
She's,
So, but it doesn't matter if it's a puppy or it's
yeah.
a toddler or it's an adult. Behavior that's rewarded will be repeated,
Oh, absolutely.
right?
I always use analogies of either animals or toddlers when doing leadership training because it works. Like literally, we revert to our very basic behaviors because we're animalistic. And if we're hungry or tired or stressed, guess what? Doesn't matter how much training you've had. If you haven't been intentional and done the reps, you're going to go back to throwing your toys and getting frustrated and reacting rather than
Yeah.
making a choice. And we often reward the wrong behavior. The dog comes running up to you and jumps on you, and you go, "Oh my God, I miss you so
No,
much," right?
right.
Now they're going to jump on you again. So it's the same thing with behavior at work. And oftentimes businesses are focusing on KPIs of only sales metrics, but not retention, for example. And so selling occurs at all costs, but then promises are not kept, and then clients leave.
Yeah. No, you're 100% right, and it's not everybody's in a position not to respond, to that
Of
text or that
course,
email or 1 o'clock in the morning, and
particularly in this industry or business aviation, that's a 24/7 environment. So
24/7,
there's
and
caveats to the
you're
rule.
afraid to set boundaries. It's layered and it's nuanced. Let's just leave it at that, right?
Well, and that's the thing with boundaries is I'm glad you brought that up, that it was beautifully said. Boundaries are nuanced. Context, nuance, and discernment. Like we have to understand our environment. What are the agreements we made, right? You can't go into a 24/7 environment working and then say, "Oh, sorry, no, my phone goes off at 7 p.m." and that's it. If
Right.
that's the case, then you don't go into that role. You go into something else, and that's fine.
100%. Yeah. Which is okay.
Yeah,
Which is
absolutely.
100% okay. You know, the whole cliche of aviation, hurry up and wait.
Yep.
And, there's delays and, it's well intentioned and it's very well processed, but there's things that are uncontrollable and, Mother Nature is one of them. And,
Yes.
parts and airplanes and air traffic control. Like it's just not gonna run like a factory making widgets where you can just set up a program and come at the end of the day, hey, you're gonna make 100 parts and you hope that 99 parts are perfect and we have a tolerance for one part being defective. It's just not that way.
No.
And then everything comes in at one time and you're like, pulling your hair out and just trying to do the best you can.
Absolutely. And there's pros and cons to both scenarios. You learn different skill sets, different ways of communicating. But even in the manufacturing environment, no matter how lean the process is, you still have the variable of humans and human behavior. So how do we make sure we're creating environments where it's not the carrot or the stick that is actually driving behavior, but that the person wants to be there, they're bought into the vision, they're growing, they're learning, and there's a long-term commitment, right? Rather
Long-term
than,
commitment, and right, it's the carrot or the stick is not effective long-term.
no,
It just,
it actually
if you,
becomes
if you
less
use the
effective
carrot,
over
then you
time.
got somebody hold you hostage, right? Because they want a bigger carrot, they want more pay or whatnot. And if you use the stick, I mean, those days are gone.
Right.
Those days are just gone. And, people just aren't going to tolerate that, and they're going to leave. And
Absolutely.
so there needs to be accountability, There needs to be accountability, but there's a way to hold people accountable. There you go.
Great book.
There
Highly
you go.
recommend
I see
it.
a lot of tabs.
Yes, a lot of tabs on this one. The first book is Crucial Conversations. This one's Crucial Accountability. I've been recommending Crucial Conversations for over a decade and using it in teams. And this one is much needed because, especially in today's world, where we CC everyone and their mom and the dog, nothing gets done. And people are not willing to be accountable. And it's only when we are willing to be accountable that we can actually have more freedom, that we can actually have results that we want, or uh, have other people enrolled in our vision and come together with us on a journey, right? If you're convincing or cajoling, it's again, you're still not tapping into their intrinsic motivation.
Yeah, the thing though that I find with accountability is, first of all, as an employer, if somebody is not performing and you want them to leave, you hold them accountable, they'll leave on their own. 100%, full stop. But if you're not in charge, if they're not working for you and you hold somebody else accountable that's in a different organization, maybe a supplier or whatnot, I I see lately just a lack of maturation of
Mm,
people being held accountable and nothing untoward or unkind. No cuss words were used. You just called them out, for lack of better words, in a respectful way. Hey, you said you were going to do this. You didn't do this. You said you were going to have it by today, and it's not. And there's excuses. And what I find is people get very defensive, and they no longer want to work with you, or you're labeled, an asshole, and you're like, okay, but my tone was was firm. It wasn't unkind. You said you were going to do X. You didn't do Y or Z, right? Like talk to me like I'm a 5-year old. You said you use animals and toddlers. Like, okay, talk to me like a 5-year old. Like, where did I go wrong? And
right.
then they lack the maturation, the maturity to have intelligent conversation. You go, you know what? Yeah, he's right. You know what? Sarah's right. She said, you know, she asked me when I could have this done. I didn't tell her when I could do this, right? And that's one of the things that I always try to practice is, instead of going to somebody and saying, "Hey, this is what I want and when I want it. Hey, this is what I'm looking for. This is the vision. What do you think? I think this. Okay, when can you have it done by?" And give yourself plenty of time. Well, I can have it done by next Monday. Well, next Monday comes and goes, and then Tuesday comes and goes, and Wednesday comes and goes, and now we've just blown through the 4 rules that mom and dad taught us, right?
Right.
Show up on time, do what you say, finish what you start, say please and thank you. There's none of those things happening. And then on the other hand, and then to make it worse, because you like held them accountable, now you're the biggest jerk, that ever lived. And so I find that part, it's a little bit of a paradox there.
Absolutely. And you know what it is? It really boils down to emotional granularity.
That's a
Most
good word.
people do not understand their experience in the moment, and because of that, and when you can't name something, what happens?
Oh, you lash out.
Right.
Yeah,
You're afraid of it, so you run away, or you
yeah,
turn and fight it because you're scared, because you
you do
don't
the
know what it
Jedi mind
is.
trick.
Yeah, exactly.
Look at
Uh,
this over here, right? Pow, So,
exactly.
yeah,
And so, what most people are doing is they're avoiding the discomfort in the moment. I don't know how to answer you, so I'm going to make you feel good and make myself feel good right now by saying Monday, but that's not realistic. And then I'm not maybe capable of doing that thing. Maybe I'm not competent enough to actually do the thing, or I'm missing a crucial step. And I don't know how to language that to you, or maybe I don't even know that I don't know that, right?
right.
And so the training has been lacking. So there's a lot of different factors at play, but really it boils down to people not being willing to be uncomfortable in the moment to say, hey, hold on. In order to accomplish this, I need XYZ. I don't have Y. Where can I get Y?
Yeah,
Right?
or like, look, I'm sorry. seemed to be another one of those things mom and dad taught us, right? Sorry, I screwed up. It's my
Right?
fault. It's accountability. Like, hey, yeah, you know what? I promised you I was going to do this. I didn't. I didn't keep my word. My bad. I'll make it up to you. Like, no, don't make it up
Yeah.
to me. Just tell
Just
me
get
when
it
you
done.
can do it
Yeah.
and let's get it done, and we'll go to the next thing. It's like the shampoo bottle, right?
Yeah.
Shampoo, rinse, and repeat.
Yes, exactly. We need to get the reps in. And I'll be the first one to say it can be a little bitter tasting when you have to say, I'm sorry, or I effed up and, I need to go back and do it again. But it's not the end of the world. And people would rather have you be straight with them than continue to dance around or make
Honesty and
excuses.
integrity. That's
Absolutely.
those are the type of people that I would just want to be around. I just want to be around people with integrity, people that are like, and we've all had our journeys where we
Mhm.
lacked integrity, myself included,
Likewise.
early on in a career, whatever the circumstances are, you weren't true to yourself. When you stray. We knew
Yeah.
when we strayed when we were 10 and 11 years old, or, we were 15 or, 18, and, we're getting drunk behind the high school or in the high school parking lot. We know we screwed up and did other things. And so, but at some point, maturity has to kick in
Yeah.
and you got to grow up. And part of growing up is saying, yeah, my
That was my
bad.
bad. Yeah. I mean, I'll give you an example that even today, I had a call at 12:30. I wanted and needed to get something done before that call. And what am I doing at 12:15? I'm scrolling on Instagram and I'm looking at the time going, yep, got 15 minutes. You know what I was doing? I was artificially creating pressure for myself so I could have the adrenaline rush so that I could feel accomplished when I got the task done just in time. Because I am still addicted to that feeling. That is a feeling that a lot of people in business aviation know extremely well. And so we get addicted to this stress cycle. And I had a little chuckle at myself because I was like, oh, yes, this is what I'm doing. I was able to recognize it in the moment and I managed to pull myself out so that I was on time for the call and I had the thing done. But it was like just barely. It was
Yeah, but
12:29
I mean,
when I
have you ever
accomplished.
looked at the Colby? It's called KOLBE, Colby Index.
Yes, yes.
So yes and no. I mean, what's interesting to me about the Colby is I was 30 years old when I took it, and it said for me to get my best results, I need to be working on 5, 6 things at a time,
Yep.
right?
Because you probably
Well,
synthesize information differently. You
right,
need that.
yeah. And so, but my dad's linear. And my dad does one and he does it to perfection. It's perfect. And then he goes to two. And
Yes.
then he goes to three. And because he's such an honorable man, right? He's such a good guy. He said, "Hey, this is the way you got to do it." I really tried to fit into his system. And I couldn't. I tried.
Yeah.
Um, led to a lot of frustration. And so when at 30 years old, I don't want to say I'm a grown man, but well, I don't think I'm an adult now. Most people would agree. But anyway, I'm somewhat of an adult, but I'm 30 years old and I realize, wow, I need to be doing multiple things to get my best results. And doing things linear the way that my dad does them is going to give me the worst results.
Mhm.
So, I might push back on that one on you where you waited to the last 15 minutes, but I think there's a thing in your Colby that says you just get your best results by procrastinating and waiting till the end because that's when you get the most creative and the afterburners kick in and you
Yeah,
just
and
push.
there is definitely an element of that. I won't argue. I'm also I tried to force myself into the linear thought model, and I can do it, but it's exhausting because it takes so much focus for me.
Yeah.
So I'm also very similar in that I have multiple things going on. I was on a call on Friday with one of my business partners, and we were talking to a potential partner for an event, and we were talking about two different events. And she got overwhelmed and said, "Do you guys do you guys have any like free time?" And we laughed and we were like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "Well, this is so much." We're like, "Honey, this is only two of our events. Like, we have a
Right.
lot of others on the pipeline too." And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with
There's
either
a
way.
role
They're
for
just different.
everybody in the organization.
Exactly.
There's
We
30
need
seats on the
everybody.
bus. You don't have to sit in the first seat. You don't have to sit in the emergency seat. You don't have to sit in the back seat. There's a seat for everybody in the bus. And
True.
your job as an employer, like a coach, for a basketball, football team, baseball team. Hey, this kid or this young lady might have been in this position all through her life, but like she really needs to be over here at this level.
Right.
And even though this is your system, maybe we need to alter the system to fit the best, style for the players that we have. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Or put them in a position where it's not disruptive to the system and they can still do their best work. So make them a vendor, for example. So they're not an employee, they're not disrupting dynamic, but they're able
right.
to still contribute, and different rules can apply, right? There's different ways that we can do this. And I love that you brought in the sports analogy. One of my recent guests, Ryan Lavarnway, he was a professional baseball player, and he was talking about, not everyone can be the star, all star, nor should they want to be. And it's the coach's responsibility and job to figure out where everyone can play to their strengths and how to have them be motivated for those things. If you have everyone in the company trying to be the CEO, nothing will go anywhere because they'll be fighting each other, trying to win and dominate all the time. No one will carry out the tasks or keep them focused, etc. So we do need every single style, and understanding those things about yourself is really powerful.
I agree.
Do you do testing with your employees at your company?
Yeah, so I say the F word a lot, but I don't say the E word. And so we say team members, we don't say the word employees.
Okay.
But yeah, I like the Colby and I like the Enneagram,
Yes.
especially for senior level
Hmm.
folks, because there's a language, right?
Absolutely.
There's a language that needs to be spoken, and I think, we grew up, unfortunately, going back to sports, there's a young player, we'll just go with a young little boy who's gifted pitcher. Well, he can't hit the ball to save his life, right? He just can't. But man, he can. He's got a slider. He's got a curveball. He's just amazing. Well, we're taught to go hire a hitting coach,
Hmm.
take him to the batting range, and practice batting. Or we should be getting him a pitching coach, you know,
Hmm.
make him the best version of himself. He's a pitcher. He's not a hitter. We don't need to be well-rounded. That whole well-rounded
No.
thing is a myth, right? It's a fallacy.
Absolutely.
I'm not well-rounded. I'm as warped as they get, you know. And so, that's the problem. We just need to focus on our strengths, and then we need to celebrate our weaknesses. We need to make fun of our weaknesses,
Yes.
and like, it's like there's certain things that I do really well, but everything else I do horrible, and I just get in the way, the company and, my fellow team members and my fellow executives and friends. And like, dude, that's not what you do. Like, you're terrible at that. Why are you meddling? Get out. I'm like, yeah, 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 you're right. Go shake hands and kiss babies. Like, go see your customers.
Yeah.
Go see our team members. So, yeah, I think we should celebrate our weaknesses and focus on our strengths. And when you get an organization that's doing that, then you've got a well-run, well-oiled machine, and
Absolutely.
that's when it becomes fun, right? I mean,
Yeah.
many people say going to work is fun and enjoyable, and they look forward to it. Not a lot, but if you're spending most of your time doing what you enjoy, yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to be
Absolutely.
enjoyable. You're going to look forward to it. If you're going into doing something that you absolutely hate, but you're doing it because, you know, economic, social, demographic, parents, religion, community says, hey, this is what you're supposed to do. You just were so happen to be born in this geographic, and so you're in the manufacturing, community, or you're in, the restaurant industry, and go find, your passion. Go find what you do, and find what you're really good at within that.
Absolutely. I love that you said to celebrate the weaknesses, because one of the markers of a really high performing team is how much fun of each other, how much they can make fun of each other.
I agree.
So when I go into an environment,
100%.
yeah, like if you
Love
ask
it.
a question and you're like, who here is pretty bad at this? And people are like pointing at each other and like teasing each other, that shows they have a high level of trust and a really great camaraderie. And you know that they're working together and they like being there.
And you see that in winning teams.
Absolutely.
If it's basketball or football, and one person passes the ball to the other, right,
Hmm.
and it's missed, it didn't get caught or they didn't catch the ball. Each person takes the blame. The quarterback takes the blame. The wide receiver takes the blame. The point guard takes the blame, and the forward or the center takes the blame. No, no, that's my fault. No, no, they're almost arguing over whose fault it is,
Yes,
right? Where a losing team, they're quick to blame
correct.
and they're quick to say it's his person's fault, that person's fault, her fault, his fault. Like it's winning teams get along well, and they take the blame when something doesn't go well, and they kind of fight over it.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with a client, right? I mean, and at the end of the day, nobody cares about your bullshit excuse. They just care about the
Nobody
result.
cares.
And they don't want to hear all the list of reasons. What actually they want is for you to see and hear them and admit that they had a horrible experience. And if you can do that, you have the ability and the opportunity to actually turn that around, and that lost
I
client, then
I
all of a sudden they
agree.
can become your biggest advocate
Best
because
customers ever.
yes, and they'll tell everybody about it. Even when you're not in the room, and if someone starts to badmouth you, guess what they're gonna do? They're gonna be like, "Oh no, no, hold on, give them the benefit of the doubt. Like, let's just
Yeah,
be real here."
yeah.
And people seem to overlook that often because they're so worried about things being perfect and having to give this image when actually people just want you to be real.
They just want you to be authentic. Show up in your authentic self. Yeah,
Yes.
I agree. Some of my best friends to this day was a result of a bad customer service, bad experience at first, and then came in. All right, where are you? Savannah. Where are you going? Houston. What time you landing? We'll be there.
Hmm.
What? Yeah, we screwed up. And then go to Houston or have somebody there waiting. We take care of it. Hey, no charge. No, 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 we're going to pay for it. Okay. I mean, but you shouldn't. We really inconvenienced you. Like, no, this was unbelievable. Like, I was going to fight you to not pay the bill. And now
Right.
I'm fighting you to pay the bill, because you took accountability. You said you raised your hand and said, it's my fault, I'll make it right.
Yeah, that's powerful. And I've seen that happen time and time again. There was a case I remember probably 6, 7 years ago where there was a mistake, and it wasn't actually our team's mistake. It was the Civil Aviation Authority's mistake. But of course, our general manager was like, "I'm not going to throw them under the bus. That would absolutely damage
Right.
our relationship." And so he had moved over from the finance, being a CFO, to being in the operational control center and being the director of operations. And he was really concerned about, what if we admit that it was our mistake? And I said, well, we don't have to admit that it was our mistake, but we need to own that it happened and that somewhere in the chain, some oversight happened, and acknowledge that it sucked for them, right? And he said, well, what if they don't pay the bill? And I was like, well, we tell them that they don't need to. And
Right.
he came back to me with these drafts of emails, and I was like, did you not listen to our phone conversations? And he kept arguing, and I said, okay, just try it my way one time, and if it doesn't work, we'll have a conversation. He sent the email off and called them, and he was like, oh my gosh, they're so happy, and they've just booked their next 5 flights, and blah blah blah. And I was like, exactly. So to your point, it's you show up, you take accountability, you
Well, they got
say,
nowhere to go.
yeah.
They're all mad, and you're like, no, you're right. You're right. There's no
It
excuse. I'm sorry.
diffuses it so much when people are trying to be angry at you,
Yeah.
and you're just like, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
it's shitty, I get it, I
Here's an
know.
ice cream.
Right?
Yeah. All right.
They'll
Want some
either get even more
sprinkles?
infuriated or they'll just totally diffuse. But usually, even if they get more infuriated, they'll just be like, Why isn't this
Yeah, but you know
working?
what?
Not
But there
working.
comes a time when there's people that are just unkind, right?
That's
And
correct.
when you go all out and you take accountability and they still aren't happy, then that's when you know you need to fire that client. And
Yes.
that's the best thing
Yes.
you can do for morale for your team is to say, hey, we screwed up, but that doesn't give anybody a right to be disrespectful to us. You know?
Absolutely. And it takes
And
courage to fire a client and to fire someone that might have been a star employee. But if they're ruining the dynamic and creating apathy or creating frustration or just downright disrespect, maybe you'll win this one event, but long term, you're going to have high turnover. You're,
yeah,
you're, you're not going to have people wanting to work there. The clients are going to be like children. You give them an inch, they're going to take a mile. You have
yeah.
to have
What my
boundaries.
favorite thing, I tell this to our team all the time. Pick your favorite beverage. I don't care if it's chocolate milk. I don't care if it's the best bottle of wine, champagne, a beer, whatever. And pick your favorite meal, right? But just not like enough for the family to attend, just for your plate. And now take a tablespoon of salt and put it on there. It only takes a tablespoon of salt or a teaspoon of salt to ruin the greatest bottle of wine ever made, the greatest dish ever. Like, it doesn't take much, you know?
No.
That's why, aviation especially, it's kind of a zero sum game. So like when there's mistakes and you own it, there's you might not get them back. You just might not get them back.
Right.
But if there's a team member specifically that's cancerous, you know, they will kill the organization one way or the other because other people are like, okay, he might be the star, he might get 50 points a game, but he's a jerk and he demoralizes the whole team, and he's nothing without us. He still needs a supporting cast.
Right.
You know? So
Absolutely.
I'm 86. See you later. I'm out. So
And in
sorry, little restaurant
aviation,
metaphor there.
no, that's a great metaphor. And in aviation, the fact of the matter is we have to be accountable because there safety, like there's a lot of risk there. And if we're not willing to, if we're overlooking things or we're creating unsafe environments for people to speak up, right, that is how a lot of incidents or accidents can occur. And so it really is even critically important, and not everybody's role might have that safety on the line, that life or death that can happen if you're not communicating properly or you're not creating a safe working environment. But businesses exist to create value. And if you're not creating an environment where people can add value and create value, then what are you doing? You're not running a business.
Well, and I also would take it a step further, right? Like, as an employer, you are trading somebody else's time for money. It's very simplistic. And if you don't add value to their life other than money, they're not going to stay long term.
Oh, goodness, no.
And you look at surveys about what team members and what people want. Uh, Little puppy, if you can hear that in the background. Um, Pay's usually number four. It averages number four. They want an opportunity to grow. They want to be respected. And they want to be heard, and yeah, they want to get paid. And then conversely, if you find a team member that this all they want is money, 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 and they want to be paid, you kind of know right away, like,
Right.
if they're not asking how they can create value or what they can do better for the organization, but they're quick to say, I want to raise. You just kind of know that they're not a long-term player.
Absolutely. And this is why having your values, your company is abiding by, and that vision so clearly articulated is so incredibly important because it begins at the hiring stage. And this is where a lot of companies make mistakes. They're hiring people that are not in alignment with the company's values or with what they say they want to do. Maybe they themselves are a little bit idealistic in terms of what they think they're doing. And
Yeah,
so
and I
getting
think,
really clear on that is crucial.
and hiring is a skill, and um, There's introvert people and there's extroverted people, and extroverted people are going to interview really well, and introverted people aren't. Um, there's two things that you can't hire for, and one is integrity. Somebody steals the stapler, or, a ream of paper. They might steal more from the company. And then the other ones is really work ethic. And you just can't hire for those things. You can't hire for that during the interview process. And
Mhm.
so that's why, we try to use, the Enneagram or the Colby to see what their natural instincts are, like
Yeah.
what they do, and is that in alignment with the job that's been posted, and try to ask them thoughtful questions, and then tell them like, hey, this is like dating, you
Yeah.
know. Uh, we can all talk about some disaster dates we've been on, right? Just disaster, like, and then nothing wrong with that other person, and I'm sure that you could argue there's a lot wrong with me, and that's okay. But it just wasn't a fit. It just wasn't a fit, and I think we need to be, vulnerable enough to say, hey, this isn't working, or let's date for 3 months and 6 months. Let's do this little dating period, and let's just kind of see what happens, and go from there. And then that's where, if you find somebody, you get to evaluate them to see, hey, do they show up on time? Are they doing the four rules? Hey, this is the keeper. This is a keeper, and you can't buy loyalty. You just can't. You can't bonus loyalty. Loyalty is earned. And so then when you find somebody like that, now it's the role of the coach, the role of the business owner, the role of the business unit manager to say, hey, this person's not that great at this job, but daggone, they're good people, and we need to find a good place for them. And maybe they were in inventory management, and their math sucks. But their customer service is great. So let's move them over to the other side.
Yeah. It's sometimes you have the right person on the right bus, but they're in the wrong seat.
Well, I say that all the time. I love that. Yeah, we're in the wrong.
I started saying in aviation, I use the analogy of they're on the right airplane. They're just everyone. You can't have everyone in the right wing. You won't be able to take off.
Right.
So redistribute your weight and balance. Make sure they're in the right place.
Oh man,
Um,
I gotta steal that. I'll say that you said it the first time. I'm gonna say Sarah said this, and then I'm gonna
you
say
go.
I heard this, and then I'm gonna say, you know what I like to say. The
You know
third
what?
time I'm gonna own that one. Dad, on it, Sarah. That was really good.
I'm glad you like it, and please feel free to
Okay, so
use
that
it.
was at the 42-minute mark. I got to go back there and watch this, and I got to write it down 10 times, and I got to say it 3 times tomorrow so I could own it.
Yeah, no, it's a really great way to reframe, right? And what you said about the things you can't teach, right? And when you're hiring, what to look for. It's also my favorite Zig Ziglar quote is your attitude, not your aptitude, determines your altitude. You can teach anybody a technical skill, but you cannot teach someone who is unwilling to learn, who doesn't have that right attitude of, hey, this was something I didn't know how to do. I made a mistake. Now let me learn from it, right?
Right. Well, you're dating yourself a little bit with Zig, but I loved Zig so much. I had his cassette tapes, right?
Amazing.
And I remember driving from Indianapolis to New York, it's 14 hours, and I listened to his tapes all the way there and all the way back. And I could even get friends and his corny jokes, Some of them I
Those are
still say
great.
to
I
this
love a
day.
good dad joke.
I loved Zig Ziglar. He was, yeah, he had a huge impact, on my life, and just, garbage in, garbage out. You put the good stuff in, you get the good stuff out, and that was his quote. And so I was just putting the good stuff in. I was just listening to, Zig and Norman Vincent Peale, and how to win friends and influence people, and how to start a conversation, which I'd be really interested in that other book you talked about.
Crucial conversations.
Yeah, it's like people, just don't know what to say anymore, and it's just, I think, unfortunately, the smartphone is making it even worse. And I've noticed this, I travel a lot. I'm in aviation, and I stop and I see friends, and they've got little kids, and Uncle David's here, and I'm gonna take him to school. I'm like, okay, how do we get there? And they're like, well, I don't know.
Yeah.
You've been going to school for 3 years. Like, how do you not know? I'm like, mom just puts on the GPS, or mom drives. I'm like, mom doesn't put on GPS. The mom drives, and I'm like, well, you're not paying attention where she's going? And they're like, no, because they're doing this the whole time. And I'm like,
Right.
man, that's just not right. Like, I had the trip
Yeah.
sheet from AAA,
I know. I
trip sheet,
remember.
the people that took the yellow marker and tripped here, and like, you planned your rest stops, and you know, go see Stone Mountain here, and like,
Yeah.
oh, what?
Using a map. I mean, I still remember when I go back to Sedona, because I learned to drive when I lived in Sedona and I went to high school there. I can navigate around everywhere because I had to learn where the streets were and I had to
Right.
learn where to turn and where to go and where my friends were. Outside of that, I mean, now in Austin, I don't drive very often, but when I do my best to pay attention. And I usually I ride a bike around. I don't actually own a car, which is wonderful, I must say. And because I ride a bike or walk, I actually know where I'm going because I have to pay attention.
Yeah.
And I know the landmarks. And so it's made it easier when I do get in a car to know where to go and where to turn. And it seems so simple and so basic, but yes, most people are not paying attention. It's very similar to when you're in a group of people, and you're going to dinner and from one place to the next, and then like 2 days later, a month later, half a year later, people are like, oh, have you been to this place? You're like, no, never heard of it. And then you get there and you look around, you're like, oh yeah, I've been here
We've
before,
been here
right?
before.
But you didn't pay attention to getting there,
Right.
or you
Right.
don't know.
Well, yeah, you're right.
This is an invitation for everyone to look up. Do a detox. I started doing in 2024. I have to admit, I've fallen off the bandwagon, but Friday
Yeah,
evening,
like today, right? At
5 p.m.
11:45 for your
Uh-huh.
noon call, or 12:15.
Yes, no, no, no. I fell off the bandwagon of turning my phone off for 24 hours.
Oh,
I
okay.
would do a digital detox of Friday, 5 p.m., phone goes away, no internet, nothing that's connected. If I'm listening to music, I'm going to put a record on, no Spotify. It's got to be manual. And if I have planned, people are like, well, how do you meet people on Saturdays? Like, well, I make my plans on Friday or earlier. I pick a time, I show up on time or early. I figure out the directions, I write them down,
Yeah,
um, and I get there just like I used to 20 years ago. Like
it's
it
amazing.
can happen. And I
Remember we
find
had the
that,
rotary phone?
yeah, I remember playing on my grandma's rotary phone. She had one, and I would always be like, "Can I use your phone to call mom?" Because it was so much fun.
Yeah. My dad was so mad at me because I think I was 10 years old and I saved, I don't know, $60 of birthday money because I wanted a phone like this.
Oh, yes.
I
Uh-huh.
wanted that phone. And he's like, that's a waste of money. I'm like, it's the coolest thing ever. Right?
I love it. Do you still have that somewhere?
I don't. I wish I did. That would have been classic. It was great.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's obviously technology serves us in a lot of ways, but it really does limit us, and it's about intentionality. At the end of the day, when we talk about how we grow ourselves or grow a team, we need to have the intention there, and we need to take the steps to get the reps in, right? Because the road to
Don't
hell
you
is paved
think,
with
though,
good
like,
intentions.
let me ask you this,
Yeah.
because I tell people this all the time. I live a very intentional life. And do you ever get the sense that people are intimidated by that?
Oh,
Your
absolutely.
intentionality?
Yes.
Is
I
your
have
intent to intimidate them?
no.
No. Yeah,
When you're intentional, you hold up a mirror, and most people don't like looking in the mirror without their rose-colored glasses. And so when they get a reflection that they don't like, they get intimidated.
yeah, that's been my struggle. It seems lately is I say what I mean what I say, and I'm very intentional, and
People are also intimidated by being direct. So
yeah,
if
I'm
you
a
are
little
very
direct.
direct and you're clear in what you want or what you go after, most people don't have that clarity, and they're scared to find out because underneath they understand that something will need to change if they admit that they want that thing, whatever that thing is.
Right.
And that change is scary because it might be a big change. And so it's easier for them to continue just numbing or keep status quo until it's not, right? My one of my guests had an analogy that he said it's the dog on the rusty nail. I was like, "Oh, what do you mean by that?" And he said, it's imagine you come to my house and my dog is on my front porch and they're just like, shifting, shifting around every 10 seconds, just won't stop moving. And you say, "What's wrong with your dog?" You go, "Oh, don't worry about him. He's fine. He's just sitting on top of a rusty nail." And you ask me, "Well, why doesn't he just lay over there? Like the whole porch is wide open."
Right.
And it's because it doesn't hurt enough yet.
Oof.
Most
Yeah.
people are
That's profound.
content. Yeah, right? And you feel called out. And if you feel
Sarah
called
two,
out listening
David
to this,
0. You're
there's
scoring them
something for you to
today. How
investigate,
much more time do we have on this?
right? Let's dive in. All right, David, where are you lying
Aren't
on the
you just the
rusty
host?
nail?
Aren't you supposed to like raise up your guests instead of emasculate them with these great one-liners and quotes? Enough
I'm
about
I'm
you. Can we talk about me?
I'm the wind underneath your wings so that you can gain more lift, David.
Thank you. Thank
You're
you.
welcome. You're welcome. No, I mean it's such a great
Now that's
analogy.
really, and you're right. That's very profound. I mean it sincerely, all joking aside. But that is, you're right. You know, it's easy to get up at 5 a.m. and go work out. It's easy to stay on a nutrition program. It's easy to get the job done the right time, the first time. It's easier to stay in bed, right? It's easier just to grab some chips and some cheese dip, you know? It's just easier just to finish the day and come back tomorrow,
Right.
right? And unfortunately, people don't choose easy, they choose easier.
Yes, that's the one liner for today's podcast.
There we go.
There we go.
Flattery will get you nowhere after this. Um,
No, it's true. It's a lot of these things are easy, maybe on their own, and yet a lot of times we try to stack things, right? And the easier thing is to not do that. It's inertia. It
yeah,
takes some effort to get that object moving. But once it's moving, I mean, sometimes the hardest thing is just putting your gym shoes on. Like just that one simple act. I remember when I was getting back into the gym, I had like this lull for a while after an injury, and it was so hard to get started. I started going to sleep in my workout clothes, which for women are not necessarily always comfortable because it's like compression leggings and a tight
right.
sports bra. And, it's like just, I don't want to have the tight clothing on, but it was already on. So all I had to do was like swing my feet over, put the shoes on, and then I could just go. And that was what helped me get out the door. And it
Yeah,
was this
whatever it
mindset.
takes. It's
Yeah.
whatever it takes. It's not a one size fits all. There's not a magic pill. There's not a magic
No.
bullet. You
If
got to
there
figure out what's.
was, we would already all have six packs and $1 billion.
Let's see what happens with this AI. Although I'm already catching on to when people are using AI. Have you
Yeah.
noticed?
Yes, there's some telltale signs.
Yeah, and I'm like, nice try, AI. Why don't you tell me what you really think,
Yeah.
sport? So
AI, I definitely I have
I
a
think it's
name for my
cool.
AI. Mine is named Glitchard. We had a whole conversation to get to his name. And it's a great tool, but it's more of a like I will have a conversation with it to get to something and
Hmm.
help me put things together. But again, that's probably my nonlinear process of thinking of like let me get all of these bits and things and then spit something out, like amalgate it together and
Right,
have this new recipe. But so many people just copy paste, and it's really easy to tell when you do that because it's not your voice. It's something you would never say in
right,
real life.
right. 100%, 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. You know what? I'm gonna switch us gears a little bit because I know us and I know that we will just talk until nighttime. if
We
we
don't
have
want
a
to bore
chance.
your audience.
But I would love to get to the three questions I always like to ask my
Okay.
audience. So the first question is, what is your superpower?
Well, that's a great question. Um, I I think maybe empathy, and I'll tell you why. Like for whatever reason, from listening to Zig Ziglar to my other experiences with coaching,
Mm,
and I just would set out a goal and I would crush it, demoralize it, and every time I set out a goal, I just got it, and I grew, and I'm not trying to impress anybody here, so I grew a company from $100 a month to $1 million a month in 7 years, actually a little bit less than 7 years, and so that's amazing. It's amazing growth, and it couldn't happen without an amazing team. Definitely, I should say we. I shouldn't say I. We. But you kind of get God syndrome. When you're opening up new markets, and the heavy hitters of the world, and literally the world, are saying, "Hey, come open up for us in Paris, and Nice, and London, and Switzerland, and Singapore, and Kazakhstan," and you're on a roll, and you're doing these air shows all over the world, and and then you have a sudden loss,
mm,
a catastrophic loss. And if you would have told me before that loss, "Hey, I just lost my father," horrible, right? Unexpected. I would say, "Hey, Sarah, don't worry about it. Just set a goal to be happy, and you'll be all right." And like just lacked compassion and empathy because my whole world was just setting a goal and getting it.
mm.
And now I can walk into a room and I can smell a setback. I can smell when somebody's going through a really bad time. So I don't know if it's my superpower, but I am kind of proud that shifted because I
Mm.
wasn't empathetic, and you can't be empathetic. You can't be vulnerable. If you can't be vulnerable, then you can't really be honest with yourself, and then you really don't have a lot of, I wouldn't say you lack integrity, but you just don't have as much integrity unless you have, you're not, unless you're vulnerable.
That's
So
beautiful.
to say, "Hey, I've been there," you know,
Yeah.
and a true entrepreneur, a really good entrepreneur, is going to say, "I've had more losses than wins." You know,
Oh, yes.
a newly successful entrepreneur is like the gambler who tells you every time he wins and never tells you all the losses,
Yeah.
right? "Oh, I won $100,000 doing this." Yeah, but you lost $1 million to get to this point, right? Like, and so I'm the first one to say, "Yeah, I've been fortunate, but my losses are greater than my wins," and so maturity. We talked about that earlier. Like, so I'm doing things a little bit different this time. I'm going to be a little bit more cautious. I'm not going to say yes, and yeah, I know this market really well, but I don't really know that market.
Right.
The David, 1.0 was, had God syndrome. Like, well, I know everything about everything because I'm this amazing business person who grew a company from $100 a month to $1 million a month. Like, no, you jackass, you're just part of this, revolution called net jets and fractional ownership, and you just and a emerging market and blah 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 blah. You just kind of rode the wave, you
Yep.
know. You worked hard, and our team worked hard, but you're not the greatest businessman that ever walked the earth. So I don't know if it's my superpower, but certainly it's something that I'm glad that I evolved to.
Thank you for sharing that. It's uh, it's
Yes.
it's really powerful to reflect back and see the different iterations of ourselves, and it's not saying that the first iteration was wrong or bad, but it's just that first version, right? And you evolve along the way. Empathy is really human, and in order to be able to, as you said, know yourself so well that you can be in integrity, that requires taking a look in the mirror. That requires being honest with yourself, and understanding that it's not always about you. It's the we, it's the community, it's the thing we're building together. As you said before, the star actor is cannot have that role without all the supporting cast, right?
100%.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome. Thank you for
Thank,
that.
thank you
Yeah,
for asking. It's a good question.
I love that answer. I just actually saw something the other day as well that was talking about men in particular, and that one of the greatest ways to build empathy and emotional intelligence is to read fiction books. On average, more women read fiction books than men. She gave some statistics, right? But I have to say, there was a period of time where I stopped reading fiction, and I would only read, all the productivity books and
Oh,
communication books,
trust me, I've been
etc.
there.
But fiction is what gives you a lens into another's world. And that is what helps you understand the nuance and the complexity of what it means to be human. And then that gives us more empathy because we can understand the social context in which others might
That's
operate
good.
in.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. And I'm glad, and you have two more questions to ask now, how we're doing on time, but that's what I love about art. And art is very broad to me. It can be music, it could be what we think of art, somebody's painting,
Yeah.
it can be graffiti, you know, it, I just love, it could be a play, it could be a movie. Um, I just love stepping into somebody else's world because in our world of aviation, like, we're always on 24/7. It's just nice to step into somebody else's world and I just love that. And it's where my creativity blooms.
Yes. Definitely, it's wonderful to have your creativity bloom as well, and to put yourself in those spaces and to make time for that, right? That's an important part of our development and our ability to innovate.
I agree.
Okay, my second question. Who would you say is on your personal board of directors? Now, these can be people that you actually know, that you converse with regularly and touch base with. They can also be an avatar, a fictional character, someone that you've never met, like a celebrity, or
Yeah,
someone
so
that you follow.
it's another interesting question. So I've got a husband and wife who are very dear to me, um, who would never let me go back to David 1.0. Uh, I talk to them almost every day, so I would say that they are on my personal board of directors. Of course, my wife, and interestingly enough, my 25-year-old son. He's saw all the failures, he saw all the setbacks, and he's just smarter than me, better than me, and I kind of revere his take. He's black and white. I don't know where he is on the empathy chart. Um, where I might be too empathetic. Like you remember Steve Martin, the jerk, and
Yes.
he's like, you're what? You need, oh, well, let me write you a check,
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
he's the first one to call bullshit. And then I'm very fortunate. I have three different people that run three different of my business units, and I consider each of them friends. But they're very astute in their observations and what's working, what's not working, and telling me the truth versus, being a yes man. So I would say that, you know, my husband and wife friends, my wife, my son, um, my three directors, definitely. I don't know if that's the answer you're looking for, but
So the answer is whatever you want it to be.
yeah.
I'm curious
And,
if you
then
have.
one other thing is, so I there's I had some mentors, right? And I grew up Catholic, and one of my customers, Jewish, very very prominent Jewish man, and I just loved his authenticity, and I loved his banter with his wife that they had together. It was the original Sonny and Cher. It was the original
Mm.
insult humor. I just, but he was kind. But he was intentional. He was direct, and he's since passed. But I still live by what he taught me, and you know, and the one thing that he always said. And I say it to this day, if money can solve it, it's not a problem, you know? And, right now, as we speak, somebody just lost their spouse, somebody just
Yeah.
lost their child, somebody just lost their puppy, you know? I
Yeah.
mean, you have one, I have one, they're like family members, right? It's just
Oh,
devastating, right?
my goodness.
And
Yes.
we would write a check to bring him back,
I
all of
would do
those,
anything.
anything, right? For anybody, and cancer has affected every one of us. And I've lost, a niece who had three little kids to cancer, and I've lost another niece who had two adult kids to cancer, and it's just horrible. So if money can solve it, it's not a problem. It's something I think about quite a lot. We didn't get to choose where we live. Um, we just happen to be, in a country of prosperity, and kind of we're lucky there. So there's a lot of things that we have to be grateful for.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a beautiful reminder. And going back to what you said before, gratitude. It's a very powerful practice, and where we put our attention, we will notice more of the same.
Yeah,
So when we can shift our attention to the things that we are grateful for, then we'll notice more and more of that. And
I
again, then
agree.
we won't see these problems that are probably not problems.
I agree. 100%.
All right, final
Last
question.
question.
This is
I'm
this
0
this is
for
the fun
2.
one.
Come on,
This is
let me
the
see if I can
fun
come in and get the last one.
one. Okay. Um, I've had this question for several years now, but it's even more fun now because of all the things that are in the news about UAPs and what's really out there. But imagine that an intelligent life form of some kind has come to Earth, and you are the first human. David Allen is the first human that they get to interact with.
Oh my gosh, imagine the disappointment.
What, what do they learn about humanity because they meet you?
Oh man. How to do things the wrong way.
How to make
You
fun
know
of
what? It's just,
themselves?
Yeah, listen, I think, you know, what do they learn about humanity? I, just to tie it back, like, my mom was an immigrant from Costa Rica. She never made more than $1,000 in her life, a month in her life. My dad, he's an amazing craftsman, just amazing, amazing photographer. He used to make jewelry, and he's a musician. He's
Hmm.
just an amazing guy with his hands and a kind person. And so, who I am is the values and the things that they taught me. And my mom always said you can be or do anything you want to do as long as you work hard, right? And my dad was like, do it right the first time.
Yeah.
The longest distance, what is it? Um, the longest distance between 2 points is a shortcut. And I hated that because I just wanted to shortcut everything. I wanted to make it easy, right? And he was right because it would take twice as long because you have to go back and do it the second time. So do it right the first time. And so, yeah, I just think opportunity to, you know, here I am, you know, living the dream. I'm living the dream. Businesses in Europe and all throughout the United States. I have an airplane and I get to fly and I get to do other things and I get to meet great people like Sandra Nelson who introduced me to you and now I'm on your podcast. Like, are you kidding me? Like, this is amazing, right? And
Absolutely.
so I'm just an extension of my parents, and so I don't know, persistence, and I definitely made my mistakes, and I'm not proud of all of them, and I'm sorry for the ones I've made, and where it's caused other people some pain, and I truly am. I don't have any regrets in life. I just, I was intentional about the way I did things. I listened to some of the wrong people, um, but try to come back and make it right the second time. And sometimes you can't make it right with some of the people that you've hurt, and those are called consequences,
Hmm.
right? And we have laws in this country, and and sometimes things happen, and you break the law and there's consequences. You have to spend time in jail. So I've suffered some of those consequences. I'm still suffering from some of those consequences of some bad decisions. But persistence, persistence, persistence. Stay at it.
Yeah. Thank you. So what I'm hearing is that they would learn that we can learn and we can grow, and that we can also be misguided as humans, and that's okay.
That's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.
It's awesome. David, it's been such a joy having you here with me today. Thank you so much for your time and for your authenticity and showing up the way you have.
Thank you. It was really nice to meet you.
Yeah, it's been really wonderful to meet you as well. We'll definitely forward this over to Sandra so she
Yeah,
can
we need
listen
the star of the
in.
show to be here.
Exactly. We should have gotten like a cutout poster of
Yeah,
us
exactly.
to bring here. Yeah. Now, David, if people would like to reach out to you, learn more about what you're doing in the world, where is the best place to direct them?
Look at my website, right? No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, yeah, so allengroup.com, and it's allengrupe.com. And I also have that same email, but .eu. Can get a hold of me either way. Just my email's posted on there. So,
Wonderful. Well, we'll make sure that's in the show notes for anyone that may wish to reach out. And thank you
okay,
again
thanks.
for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And for everyone who's been listening live, thank you for joining us. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the comments. We'll be back next week with another episode. Thank you and see you then.